Okay, we're recording. So this is our week 2. What is the date today? August 26th of 2024. I try to put that at the beginning so when I'm looking for something, it's easy for me to find. I'm thrilled with the participation in the group. I just want to say that right off the bat. We do have somebody that's going to join us a little bit later in the call. She had something else she had to be on. Who's going to share her testimony. She was another tester, and I love her, love her. I have loved her for a long time. She's so sweet. You guys will get to meet her. She reached out to me when I was sort of being real strong about my opinions about Restore, and when there were mixed reviews and all this, and she was like, girl, I love it too. Anyway, I want her to tell you guys about her experience because it's very eye-opening as well. I want to applaud you guys on the exterior physical space cleaning things that you're doing. The participation in this group is making me smile every morning. Jetty and I have this little routine that we do in the mornings where we had to buy a split bed that does this in lieu of a hospital bed, basically, when we got home with him. And so now we have lots of people use these regardless, these split king, like ours is a split king, it rises and stuff. And so you can put it in anti-gravity setting, you can do all this fun stuff. And in the mornings we just I sit him up in the bed and we just sit there and drink coffee. I sit in a chair across from him. We just sit there and drink coffee and talk about whatever we're learning on our phones, listen to voice messages from the grandbabies and all this kind of stuff. And I've been sharing with him about things that are going on in this group and stuff. And it's been, I don't know, that's been really fun. I'm not sure why I started telling that. It'll circle back around. It usually does. My life these days, let me just tell you, about thinking back now that people are telling me what they're telling me about Restore, is giving me so much more clarity as to why I was able to survive the hospital situation the way I was. Because I knew I felt so good before we went to the hospital. And I knew once I got there, first of all, I was just a bundle of emotions and hormones and all that kind of stuff for the first few days. But once I got my Restore back, everything started regulating again. I'm learning so much about what the liver has to do with histamines and what the liver has to do with hormones and balancing and all that kind of good stuff. So, the cleaning out the spaces thing. That's what I was talking about. The participation in this group has been wild in comparison to other groups I've done. And I think that's lovely. I wanted to congratulate you guys. There is definitely a connection between, I'm going to call it a toxic release, both inward and outward. There's something about connecting the inner and the outer. There always has been for me, even when I do stuff that in regards to healing, supernatural healing, that kind of thing. There's always something. And I will tell you something else, that this makes me think of. When I was doing breakthrough trainings, I think I started doing those maybe in 2016 or 17. That was one of the main things that I felt God telling me to focus on, was giving people something to do while they were trying to have a breakthrough, like giving people something to put their hand to, like practical things. In that way, like people would say, this breakthrough thing it's better than therapy. Well, and I'm not saying that it is or not, because I've never really gone to therapy or anything like that. But when I started really thinking about it, I thought that was one of the aspects that was the greatest. Then, last year, maybe late last year, it feels like, this show came out on, I think it's on Netflix. It's a documentary that Jonas, what's his name? Jonas, the actor, it's him and his therapist. He is doing a documentary about his therapist because his therapist had helped him so much. And that was one of the main things that the therapist said. And I was like, he put words to, it's called STUTZ, STUTZ. He talked about how one of the main things that he did that was differing from other psychiatrists, counselors, whatever, is he gave people something immediately to do, not just things to think about, not just things to ruminate about. He gave them something. He even doodles on a piece of paper, like does a drawing and everything, gives people a visual. And it really resonated with me. Also, although I don't probably fully endorse anything, if you ever don't hear me saying, you should watch this, you should watch that. I am of the belief that if you're an adult, you're old enough to take your own trash out. So when you're watching something and you're going, oh, I wonder if Lori believes that. Like, I used to watch Tony Robbins stuff, and he's very interesting to me as well. And one of the most interesting things I've ever seen about him is his documentary. Do I fully endorse everything he says and does in that video? No, I don't. But still, I learned so much from listening to the concepts of it's all psychological stuff. And so anyway, as adults, anytime you hear me say something like watch STUTZ, I don't remember what all was in it. I always take my own trash out if there's stuff in there that I don't agree with, like on a spiritual level or whatever. So okay, I'm going to bring up a few new things similar to lymphatic massage tonight that are things you might want to add into your routine. One, this should not be added. I just want to really highlight it. Everybody should probably know this already, but staying hydrated is so important. It's like crazy important. We have a product for hydration, but also if you don't want to pay for that, especially like if you are on a limited budget and you're like, I mean, a lot of people like the, what do I want to say? A lot of people like how simple it is to add a hydrate stick to some water, but I want to really appeal to the masses in this group to where I feel like there are layers of plexus people. There are people who are hardcore triplex users. They, they got well because of initial getting over a fungal issue that they didn't know they had. They got rid of their aches and pains. And those people usually hang around, and when new products come out, they give them a try, and some of them stick and some of them don't. And that's sort of how I see the biggest broad spectrum of plexus users. Then we have those who use only one product, and that's totally good. We have those also who use every single thing that we put out, everything. But I'm not here, and I'm not doing these things. First of all, you might not even buy any plexus. A lot of you might not even be with plexus, and that's okay. But I'm not here to like sell you something else in addition to what, especially in the day and age that we live in now. But if staying hydrated and learning other ways to help your electrolytes, there are other ways. There are simple ways. I encourage you to do your own research on other ways to keep your electrolytes balanced, to keep your hydration at its highest. And if you want to, I love the hydrate that we have. I give that to Jetty every morning. That's the first thing I make him drink every morning. It makes my life easier to give him that. And I think it's great for athletes, but also if you are doing something where you've got lymphatic. Oops. We've got a microphone on here. I don't think it'll let me. Okay. If you are doing something where you have lymphatic fluid moving, you need to be hydrating. Also, I encourage you, I challenge you actually, that whatever level of water quality that you are currently at, let's say you drink tap water, that you would look into like, what's the next best step? Like maybe you can't make the full move into like, I dug a well and now I drink it straight from the ground, and that's okay. But perhaps that you could buy a filter, maybe for your water bottle, or maybe you could buy a filter for your faucet or whatever, anything to get the fluoride and chemicals out of what you're drinking. If you're drinking water out of a bottle constantly, even that is not the greatest. The plastic in it, it doesn't have a lot of the minerals in it that we need. There are lots of, these are things I'm throwing out there that I wish someone had highlighted to me early on in my journey. Things that are of the utmost importance, but that you don't have to get yourself in such a mind boggle that you just don't do anything. Like if you look at it and you're like, oh, I should buy a Berkey. Oh, those are expensive. Oh gosh, is there a less expensive way to do it? And then the next thing you know, you're like, I don't know, never mind, forget it. Taking that next step, this is just my humble opinion, but taking that next step to better the quality of water that you're drinking every day. That's going to look different for everybody. Hang on a second. Jonah Hill. Thank you. Stutz. That was the name of that. I'm catching up in the chat here. I'm going to say something that might shock you guys. Somebody said, I'm a hardcore plexus user. I use everything. I encourage you that if you ever get to a place in your plexus usage that you're like, gosh, I feel like I'm at a stall, I encourage you to back off of a few things for just a few days, or take a few things during the week and not during the weekend for a few days to see if you can reboot and restart. And I will tell you too that, even these supplements are having to go through our liver. Like everything that we are taking in are things that our body is having to process. So, like I was thinking about the other day, I was thinking, man, if you're using everything, and then I know so many other people are like maybe using half the products in Plexus and they're using 15 other supplements and they're, whatever. Products to stop and start again. I don't know. That'd be hard for me to answer. It would be dependent on the person because some people just can't live without certain things. And I would hate to tell you to not take those things, but okay. Active is a great one that you could back off of. If you're like, I can't, that's probably not a good sign, honestly. You probably need more sleep so you have better energy during the day. There are probably lots of things that you can do to not need that caffeine, not need all the extra energy every day, but active would be a great one to back off for a few days and come back at it. That's just my opinion. Also, I don't know. I just think that that's a good idea sometimes. So, okay. We're going to talk about, again, we're going to come at this kind of easy, but I think it'd be really smart if some of us would start doing some soaking baths, Epsom salt type baths, whatever your budget will allow type baths. But I know that there are better qualities in certain things. Magnesium is another thing that you can soak in. I have actually in the past done Epsom salt, baking soda, but you have to be careful because that is true. Not all baking soda is made the same. Some of it has harmful junk in it. And I was even doing borax for a while, which I don't know. They say that that's an antiparasitic. People will show you all kinds of stuff that comes out in the bathtub from their skin. So, okay. If you want to go with like baking soda, Epsom salt type thing, you can get baking soda, like at least where I was getting it, and somebody else may have a better recommendation on this, is that you can get baking soda from Bob's Red Mill, like the gluten-free company that does all kinds of like flour and those kind of things. They have a good baking soda as far as I'm concerned. I think it's a good one. There may be better out there. Yes, Epsom salt with no fragrance. I agree with that. Oh, the fragrances smell so good. I know they do. I know. Let's also talk about those things you plug in your wall. Have you seen the meme floating around that says, it says like, I used to be young and fun or something like that. And it says, now I'm unplugging wallflowers at people's houses or something like that. Like, and it wasn't wallflower, Glade plugins, something like that, where you're unplugging stuff at people's houses. Well, I'm to that place, like when I had the guest house and was running it like an Airbnb all the time, I was always concerned that somebody would walk in. It's an old house. And I was always thinking, sometimes it's left sitting there for several days. Like it was mostly rented on the weekend. And so there for a while, I had a thing that would just in the air every now and then, like motion detected or and that was probably, I don't know, how many years ago has that been? A while. And I started noticing, nope, just doesn't feel right here. It doesn't, even though it would smell good, I knew that stuff was not good for people's lungs. It was not good for their skin. It's not good for them to be breathing in. It's not good for asthma, all of that. And so, oh my gosh, I hate to be poo-pooing on that red and white checkered store that's in the mall, but I can't even walk by that place without getting a headache. I can't. And so I know that it's not good for me. There are so many ways to make things smell good that are cleaner. But again, these are also in moderation. I think people can overdo it on essential oils, honestly, like as far as your liver goes. Sometimes I see people use essential oils that use them. I'm not talking about anybody that's on this call. Don't think I am. You know who I'm talking to. You say, I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. But I have been around people who use essential oils to an extreme level. And I don't think that that's good. Okay. So I think you could be careful with that, but you can use diffusers in your house with essential oils. Like I said, I have a humidifier type situation. You have to be careful about mold. You have to be careful about mold and humidifiers. Yes. There was this, oh my gosh, this thing I wanted to buy so bad that was a plug-in thing. It smelled so good. I'm not even going to say what it was because I don't want anybody running out and buying it. But the more I learn, the more I'm like, no, it's a bad idea. I also have had to reprocess everything in my brain. And also what my husband has gone through has helped me sort of grow up about processing things in my brain about, I should look at this way rather than this way. Like how many times have you looked at the saying that's like, eat food for fuel and not for fun or whatever, food as fuel. Well, okay, that was a very grown up way to look at things, but it has taken me a long time before I do definitely look at it that way now. But I can feel those of you who don't look at it that way, and you're like, I eat food for Texas Roadhouse yeast rolls. Thank you very much. That's what I eat. And I get that too. I've been there. And so what I'm saying, what I'm tying together here for you is I have started looking at it like the less pressure I'm putting on my body, my liver, and any other organs, the better off it is for me. And so, like, if you are at the place, like if you're at the Texas Roadhouse place where you're that like still in the mainstream of the way that you eat, things that you can do that can start cleaning things up. I like to use the word lean into making better choices. Like one of the first things I would really, stress to you is getting rid of, this is so hard to say because I've been there, but getting rid of processed like flour, the bread that you're eating. And let me tell you, I'm going to tell you my sister's story. My sister was so incredibly allergic to wheat. We didn't know to call it a gluten allergy. We didn't know to call it celiac back then because this was a long time ago. But for 7 years, she couldn't eat wheat. It happened one day, like she's at my house. We're getting ready for a fall carnival that we're putting on for the kids. I ordered a pizza. She takes a bite, starts wheezing, and it got to a scary point. And we're like, you need a Benadryl. Couldn't figure out what it would be. I had never heard of anybody being allergic to bread. That sounded crazy to all of us. And so it couldn't have been the bread. And the next time it happened to her, she was eating chicken nuggets and she was like, I guess it's the ketchup. Ketchup must be the tomatoes from the pizza sauce or something. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, fast forward, we finally put together after enough scary incidents that, and after it got worse and worse, the actual reaction. If you, I don't know if you have ever known anybody who had a deadly reaction to foods, but sometimes it can go from like they wheezed for a minute the first time to the next time they need to go to the ER. And hers escalated like that to where she was like, oh, I guess I just can't eat wheat. And she went to multiple doctors locally. I was even in my photography business at that time. I was saving money back from each photo session. Part of my photo session money was paying off my camera, and part of my photo session money was to take my sister to a doctor. We took doctors out of town. All they could do was tell her what she's allergic to, and nobody had any help. And years go by. In fact, 7 years go by where we planned parties around what she could and couldn't eat. We ate at restaurants based on who would and wouldn't cross contaminate at a restaurant. Like if you mix up the gravy and then you stick it in the potatoes, and my sister eats the potatoes, ending up at the ER. So we had to be very careful. Flour tortillas and corn tortillas couldn't touch each other at the Mexican restaurant. She might not end up at the ER if they touched each other, but she was going to end up sick. So anyway, fast forward, I start seeing people having some luck with plexus and allergies. I was one of the ones that had luck. I can't remember if this was before or after. I know I got over a cat allergy by getting my gut healthy. And anyway, I had started putting it together and I was like, I think this might help my sister. And she was stubborn. She still is. She was stubborn about this. She would not try it. She did not want to, I don't know. I think we had all gone through a bunch of grief and stuff. And so we were going through a phase. And I kept begging her to try it. And finally, like over a Thanksgiving weekend, my family, my kids and I and my husband had gone out of town. I was texting her like crazy. And this was back when texting wasn't easy to do. And I was telling her, like, this is bad. I'd already lost 2 siblings. I lost my brother and my half sister like months apart from each other from 2 completely freak deals. One was drug addicted problems and one, we don't know, but I still can always connect it to mold exposure. That's what I always connect my brother's thing to. And so my sister was now living in my brother's room where the mold was. She had all of these symptoms, and I couldn't really find any information that now it's easy to connect those dots, but we couldn't find any information. The word gluten-free was not easily obtainable back there and all that good stuff. So I get her on the triplex after a heated texting where she ended up basically ignoring me at Thanksgiving time. And I told my husband, I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to lose another family member when I think I could fix this. He said, I think you need to just butt out because she just does what she wants and she's rebelling against you. And I was like, that can't be right. And so I sat on it for a while. I text her back and say, okay, I'm sorry that I've made things so tense between us. Mom will kill us if we're not talking to each other at Christmas. Forgive me. I'm butting out. I'm going to leave you alone about this. And she comes back at me with, okay. And I'm like, Argh! I thought she would at least have something to say. No, she didn't. But my husband was right, because as soon as she realized I was not going to be lording over the situation, she was like, oh crap. And she started it. She started the plexus regimen. She started the triplex, which was the drink and the Pro-Bio 5 and the Bio Cleanse. And in 1 month, after 7 years of not eating a bean burrito, not eating anything with flour in it, after multiple ER scares and carrying an EpiPen, after 1 month, she messaged me and she's like, I think I think it's gone. And I'm like, why? This part is fun to tell in mixed company, but basically, if her husband ate gluten, she also would react to him when they would be intimate. And so she would literally, she's like, it's like fire. And she also couldn't get pregnant during that time. Like she'd been trying for years to have a baby. And we had connected that that was obviously like her body was autoimmune in that way. So anyway, okay. I'm going to finish. I just saw that our speaker has joined us. I just happened to see her pop in here. I'm going to finish this story and then I'm going to, Datha, I see you there, girl. I was just going to let you know I had told her to message me when she got on here. So, okay. So anyway, like I was saying, my sister could not get pregnant. She told me the reason that she knew that she thought it had worked is because she saw her husband eat something and then she saw him sneak something at Christmas time and then she didn't have any problem. And I said, that is too risky. You can't just go. She said, we're headed to Taco Bueno. I'm going to eat a bean burrito. I was like, you can't just do that. She said, we're going to eat it in the parking lot of the ER. And so that's what she did. I said, you have to call me every 5 minutes. Mom is going to kill us, you know? And she called me and she's like, nothing. It didn't do anything. So we had sealed up the leaky gut problem. I'm sure this is going to cause lots of questions for those of you who don't know this story, but we had sealed up the leaky gut problem for her. And by sealing up the leaky gut problem, we had caused the autoimmune reactions to stand down. That's the easiest way to say that. Now, the reason I brought this story up today is she and I are 100% full believers, and she has been told by dietitians now that her body's reaction, we all say gluten-free, we need to eat gluten-free, but she has been told that her body's reaction was more than likely due to glyphosate, which is commonly sprayed on the stuff we eat. It's Roundup. I no longer use it in my yard. In fact, right before Jetty's accident, I went to hire a guy to like weed my flower beds, and I was going to actually hire him to do some kind of high-end fancy stuff. Like I wanted my front yard to look like my backyard. My backyard has the pool and all that stuff. And I was like, I think I'm ready to throw some money at something here. And I call this guy who has these fabulous like Instagram things where he does like, he shows you the before and he walks up to the camera and he goes, boom, and he does like that. And the after, it looks like a carnival. And I'm like, oh, that's what I want so bad. But I knew that there is no way that somebody who does that kind of work and he does it on that kind of scale wasn't going to come and round up my whole place. And my whole property, my 3 acres hasn't been touched by Roundup in more than 10 years. So I called him and I said, okay, so my question is, before we get too deep into this, like quoting me, what are your feelings on Roundup? And he said, oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. I don't use it. We don't do Roundup. And I was like, oh, okay. Like he misunderstood why I was even asking. And I was like, okay. Well, why not? And he said, too many lawsuits right now. And he said, my workers are my friends and I'm not going to kill them. And I was like, whoa, okay. People's eyes are opening, right? Okay. So glyphosate, Roundup, the stuff we kill the weeds with, there are other ways. In fact, he told me what he uses. After I asked him, I could tell he was telling me a trade secret, but I'll tell you if you decide you want to know. He told me what he uses. We've been using it and it works. Called Barricade is the thing that now I haven't used it yet. It's a pre-emergent. It was already too late in the season. The other thing is called Fusilade. It works. So in case you needed that little information. Okay. I'm going to put a break in my notes here so I know where to come back to, but I want to have my friend Datha that I was telling you guys earlier how much I love Miss Datha. I have a really sweet story about Datha giving me a sweet necklace in Maui one year that said, I think it was, and it finally rusted off my neck. That's how much I wore it. It was like a little copper plate that said, I started to say it's Luke 4:5, but that was not what it was. Do you happen to know what it was, Datha? It was Luke.
It was a scripture verse, but I don't remember. I'm trying to
Okay.
get my camera to show the video. I'm having big major issues tonight. There
Oh,
I
okay.
go.
Are you
There
on
I
here now?
go.
Let me see. Did I lose you? Where'd you go, girl? Let's see. Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. Okay. I told them we were going to have somebody tell us their story, and I told them you were a tester, but I haven't really told them anything else. If you want to tell background about your plexus, you tell what you want, because I just trust your heart and get after it. If you want to jump in, is that okay with you?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you, Lori. Thank you. And I have a computer sitting here, and I cannot make the camera work, so we're just making this roll with my iPhone. Thank you for letting me jump on here. I am so excited to speak to you ladies for a few minutes. Lori Harrison is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. I just love her.
You too,
Love
girl.
her heart. I remember the first time I met her, y'all, 10 years ago, I joined and I had no clue what I was doing with Plexus. So I found 3 people that could mentor me from afar. They had no clue who they were, but Lori Harrison was one of those 3. Lori Harrison, Sarah Marble, and Sonia Dudley. I just followed everything they did, tried to emulate so they were my mentors. They did not even know it. So the first time I met Lori, I was just a crying mess. Like I was meeting, a rock star. She's better than a rock star. So thank you, Lori. My journey began a long time ago, 10 years ago. I was a nurse for 20 years, and I jumped on the Plexus bandwagon for a few different reasons. One, I was looking for a way to make some extra income, but my husband was very sick. He was very sick, mid 40s, and had been diagnosed with diabetes, and his whole story is amazing. But basically, he was my guinea pig. Because I thought nothing was wrong with me until I got my gut healthy. And then I realized, wow, I really felt like crap for a really long time and had a wonderful testimony and just continued to use the product. And as I got older, we'll just go back into last year. 2022 was a difficult year for me. And then 2023 arrived and it got worse. Was dealing with a lot of grief. We lost my father-in-law suddenly. He had a stroke at 86. We lost a dear pet. And if you're a pet lover on here, it was horrific. Lost the pet. My husband had a relapse in his health, and all of last year was not able to work due to diabetes. And he was in a diabetic crisis for a very long time because he was not taking care of himself and not telling me. Anybody got a husband? Yep. We got really busy, bought a new house. He started remodeling, and he was sneaking honey buns and all other kind of crap when I cook. We eat clean, and he was sneaking all this stuff, and he got in a real bad mess with his health. So we're dealing with that. I had a lot of opened a business that failed. So backstory, 2023 got here last year, and I was dealing with a lot of emotional junk. I'm dealing with all of that, grief, stress, a husband that wasn't able to work, all that. And I started feeling really strange. Lori knows I'm usually a very bubbly, outgoing, love to be with people, extroverted. And I completely started changing. I didn't want to be around anybody. I cried a whole lot. I would not say the D word, depressed. I would just say, I'm sad. I'm sad. I would sit on my big front porch and I would cry. I had some horrible emotional outburst with my husband that was nothing like me. It was just not me. And so because my husband was sick, and we found some new doctors, some functional health doctors, because we don't go to the doctor. I know, y'all, this is just my journey. I was a nurse 20 years and we don't go to doctors anymore. I'm glad for them, but that was just the way we were. So we were there at the doctor's office, June of 2023 last year for my husband. And they said it was functional health doctors and I didn't have a doctor. And just, it was the goodness of God that they asked, could they draw my blood? Sure. So they drew my blood. We went back in a week or two to look at things. And that's when the light bulb went off. the doctor told me June 2023 that my estrogen was non-existent and I was in perimenopause. Well, 55 years old at the time, I guess I just thought I would never go through it. I don't know. I never thought about it. My mother never talked about it when I was growing up. My grandmother never talked about it. For some reason, and I thought, wow, now I know what's wrong with me. And I would just sit there and cry, and he gave me all the options of all the things I could do. So this is my story, y'all. I'm not knocking anything. I'm just telling you authentically what I went through. I'm this weirdo person that after I started Plexus and left nursing, I didn't want anything in me. Like, I didn't want any medications. I didn't want nothing fake. Didn't want fake teeth. Didn't want fake boobs. None. I just didn't want it for me. It was just not my road I traveled. So as he started talking and telling me all the things I could do, I didn't feel good about it. And I was like, is there anything I can do that's more natural? And so he said, well, you could try CBD. I'm like, well, what's that? Tell me about it. So he told me about it. So a month later, I got the courage to walk into a CBD store. Little me that used to be a pastor's wife. My dad's a pastor. I walk in this store, local. I live in a tiny town, and walk in, and I just kind of say whatever comes out of my mouth. And I looked, and this poor little guy behind the counter, I said, is this store legal? That's the first thing I said. And I said, those things on the wall don't look legal. Did the cops give you a hard time? I mean, so he educated me. I was willing to try anything, y'all. You could have handed me anything at this point, and I would have took it. So I did try. What happened was I felt really horrible. I didn't feel like myself, and I gained the most amount of weight. It was awful. So I decided, well, that's not what I'm going to do. So we're getting to the end of last year, and it was just bad. This year started, and I thought, well, if I can just get in the scripture, do way more Bible reading, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours of Jesus in the morning, because I was dealing with this horrible emotional, it's just awful unless you've been in it. It was just awful. Also, the weight gain was horrible. I'm only 5'4". So 25 pounds looks like a 9-month-old baby on me, because all of the weight was in my stomach and in my thighs and in my butt, nowhere else. That's where it was. I have a picture. So here I was, didn't know what to do. I felt so bad. I did not go to convention June of this year. Yeah, just this June, because I was just struggling, and it had been like so long, like 15 months. I'm like, Lord, I need some relief. So I didn't go. But when all my friends got back, they said,
you weren't a tester, right?
I was not a tester.
Oh, I lied about that, y'all. I had it mixed up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was not a tester.
Okay.
So June gets here, and I feel so bad, and I take a picture of myself, like in a bra top and some yoga pants. And I thought, but y'all, I did not have the willpower to do it on my own. I did not. If it could have been done, I was going to do it. That's me. I'm determined, Datha. I'm that scrappy person that's just I'm going to do it come hell or high water. I'm Irish. So it's the Irish in me. Most of the time do it alone, but I reached out for help. So it was the grace of God that June, I didn't go to convention. I hear about the product, and I don't even know what it is. I didn't even look at what it was, but 2 weeks before I ordered, mid-June, I said, I've got to do something. I'm going to take sugar out of my diet. I'm going to take sugar out of my diet. I'm going to up my walking. And the product came out. I ordered it because it was a shiny penny. I'm like, it's something new. I'm going to try it. I always try new stuff. I'm going to get it and just do it. And I thought, well, I'm just going to ask if anybody knows what a liver detox is. Lori, I'm just not very educated. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm a nurse.
I didn't know either. Go ahead.
I was a nurse that was never told about these things. Because that's not important. If I can, it's just sickness is more important. Okay, I'm not going to go there. Yeah. So I just started walking more, and I got a few people to do it with me. I started walking more, taking sugar out. And within 2 weeks, I started to feel different. Within 4 weeks, everything had changed for me.
Yeah.
In 4 weeks, it's like I had came out of a fog. I'm a very creative person. I had not been creative in 18 months. I would try to be creative and I would sit down and I could not think a single thought in my head. My plantar fasciitis was insane. It went away. Within 4 weeks, I could walk. I could sleep all night without having to flip from side to side because my hips would hurt. Mm-hmm. In 4 weeks, I had lost 12 pounds. In 4 weeks, the brain fog went away. In 4 weeks, I could think clearer. I'm trying to think of every win in 4 weeks.
I want you to highlight something you told me, and I don't know if this was at the 4 week point or not, but at some point you and I talked a couple weeks back, and you said, it's not just me. Something about it. You were doing a birthday party and you had went to deliver something or pick something up or somebody said something to you. Do you know what I'm talking about? Balloons or something?
Oh, yes. I had, I have a big front porch. So anytime we have an event, I have a balloon girl that comes and does balloons. So she was at my house the end of May and did balloons for my daughter's graduation. And so I had her come back on July 24th. So the end of May, July 24th was my grandson's 2nd birthday, and I had a party for him. So I had balloons. So from seeing her May 30th to July 24th, when I walked down my front steps to meet her, she just looked at me and her mouth dropped open. And she said, "Oh, you look so different." And I was like, thank you. Because when you're seeing yourself every day, you don't know. And something else happened. I was out at a local little restaurant meeting a friend for coffee, and the owner and I are friends. And she walked over, and in 1 minute of us talking, she said, "You look different." And she said, "You sound different." She said, "You sound like the weight of the world is off your shoulders." So it's a tangible difference. I feel like I have my joy back. I don't even know why, Lori, because I'm one of those people. I'm not a science girl. You just tell me something's good, and I'm just going to take it, and I'm going to see if it works for me. That's the way I am. And I'm a nurse that's not a science girl. I don't know.
Well, that's actually something that we're going to talk about later on in this Zoom tonight is how, well, I'll get into it later, but we're going to touch on the fact that they don't really get into that even when you're taking classes for becoming a nurse or in medical school or anything. Like, they don't get into nutrition. But I was so thankful because Datha is one of the ones that saw my post in the Diamond page, and she came over and she's like, "Hey girl, I love it. I want to tell you what happened to me. I want to tell you what happened to me." And I know her integrity. Like, I know that she's not going to fill me up with baloney, tell me a bunch of stuff that, whatever. And so, thank you for sharing your story. We appreciate it. Somebody said, so you did start the Restore. You started it after convention, right? Like, how quickly after convention?
July 1st.
July 1st. Okay. So she started Restore July 1st. And you should, I will grab before and after pictures. That way everybody doesn't try to hunt you down, Datha. I'll grab before and after pictures of her and put them in the group so that you guys can see what she's talking about. Because I've seen she's been sharing her journey. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. Was there something else you wanted to share?
Oh, no. I have a picture. I have 2 pictures. I have one that I put out that I'm enclosed because I did another with me in a bra top and yoga shorts. But I am modest Mary. And it's going to take a lot. I want to post it because I look like I'm 9 months pregnant. But I'm going to have to I don't know. God's really going to speak to me and say, Datha, because just posting today, I've had 6 women reach out to me and say, every single thing you said, I feel. Every single thing you just said. It's people I don't know that are local. Yeah. I'm through. So we have to talk. You have to tell me. So, and let me share this one thing. I had my blood work done again, y'all. Yes. I don't know how to share this without getting in trouble. I mean, I'll share it here, of course, but with the world. My estrogen, I had it done I had the call with my nurse practitioner last week. My estrogen levels are still at the bottom of the barrel. I think they're like 43. My estrogen levels have not changed, and I have the blood work to prove it. And on the call with her, I said, she said, well, your estrogen levels are 43. Do you want to try this, this, this? I said, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing liver detox, and this is how I feel, and this is how much weight loss. And I went down the whole thing. She just said, well, that's great. Well, that's great. Well, that's great. Well, just keep doing what you're doing. We're available if you need us. And I'm like, I can't rationalize how my estrogen is still, it's like I've got to get the paperwork, her to email it to me, but I think it was like 43, which is like the bottom of the, it was super low. I don't know. It's supposed to be like 200 to 300, maybe. I don't know if somebody's smarter than me. I don't know. But
I don't actually know. I haven't gone through all that yet myself. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. I know a lot of us have gone through it already, but thank you so much for getting on here with us tonight, Datha. I appreciate your time so much. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. I have a call at 7:30, but I'm going to stay on here till I have the next call.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Can you make it back where I can see everybody again, Babette? I don't know how to do it. You were doing it. Okay. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to jump to really quick now, I'm going to share the screen with you guys just 2 different times. I want those of you, I don't know how people are going to take what I'm about to put out there, but I wanted you to understand the background of what I'm about to let you listen to in part. Sort of like I did last week, where I was like, okay, I want you to listen to this stuff about lymphatic massage. We listened to part of it enough to wet your whistle. And a lot of you, I know you watched it because you were asking me questions. You listened to the whole thing afterwards, and it was so good about how to do lymphatic massage. Well, this next thing, and that's just, if you haven't done all that yet, you're just now joining this group or whatever, you can go back in the group and find all that stuff. But tonight, the thing I'm going to wet your whistle with is a thing. It was I don't want to give it too much background, but it was sort of something that Datha was touching on about how in the medical field, you don't get a lot of background teaching on, like, it's more about this is the disease, this is what you call it, and this is how you treat it, rather than how they got there and the core and the root issue and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. And this is current. It's so current that I'm actually first going to play you something that happened this week. I think this interview happened a couple weeks ago, but something that happened this week, in breaking, like, political news, where you saw that Robert Kennedy Jr. came out and made his big announcement, which I won't even say what it was exactly. You can deduce it if you want to go look it up. Well, actually, the clip I'm going to play for you shows a little bit, but the reason I'm playing you this clip is because he mentions the name of the person that we're going to listen to talk about this. So I want you to understand how, like, hot and relevant the topic is, because he mentions this person's name. He says, I got a call from this person that we're going to listen to speak. And it took me a while to figure out who he, because that call actually helped him make a decision, the decision that he made this week. The person that he talked to had enough influence on him and all his background with food, drug administration, over the corruption that's all in all of that part of everything that's going on right now, and even everything that's going on in the medical field. And this person has been so deeply involved in it. And he trusts their instincts on it. He said, I got a call from so-and-so. And then he leads into his decision. I'm just going to play, like, I don't know, less than a minute, I think, of him saying that. So you can hear him say this person's name. And then we're going to listen to just a few minutes of that, just to wet your whistle, so that we'll go back and listen to the interview, because it's the most compelling. Now, it wasn't like groundbreaking, earth-shattering to me. None of it was completely shocking to me, but for the accuracy and the source, the people who are talking and what they're telling you, like it's like insider information, and what they're telling you is so compelling that people who listen to it can't really turn a blind eye to it after the fact that they listen to it, about what's been going on with these administrations that tell us what's good for us and what's not good for us. Okay. And I think I sent this video to countless people, and I have had nothing but people come back and say, oh my gosh. First of all, they were dumbfounded by the decision that the person, not the RFK decision, the decision that the person made to step away from their degree and all that kind of stuff and basically follow their moral compass. That's compelling. And then they were confounded by all the information that it's a brother and sister duo. Now, the brother is who RFK is talking about in this clip. So give me a second to find it. All right. All right. I'm going to share screen with you guys. Share screen. Babette, will you see if it'll let me share? It maybe requires you to let me share screen. It says host disabled, screen sharing. Can you do something with screen sharing? If you can't, we can just listen to him say it.
See if that's what it is, if I did it.
Okay,
right
yeah, I think,
there.
yeah, it looks like you did.
Okay.
So I'm going to share this with you really quick. I think I have it queued up right where he says it.
Less than 2 hours after President Trump narrowly escaped assassination, Callie Means called me on my cell phone. I was then in Las Vegas. Callie is arguably the leading advocate for food safety, for soil regeneration, and for ending the chronic disease epidemic that is destroying America's health and ruining our economy. Callie has exposed the insidious corruption at the FDA, the NIH, the HHS, and the USDA that has caused the epidemic. Callie had been working on and off for my campaign, advising me on those subjects since the beginning. And those subjects have been my primary focus for the last 20 years. I was delighted when Callie told me that day that he had also been advising President Trump. He told me President Trump was anxious to talk to me about chronic disease and other subjects, and to explore avenues of cooperation. He asked if I would take a call from the president. President Trump telephoned me a few minutes later, and I met with him the following day.
Okay. So I don't want this Zoom that we're doing right here to be political in nature. I wanted it to, however, to be current events related, because you heard what he just said. Callie Means persuaded him to take the phone call. And then you can go on, if you don't know what decision he made, you can go on and listen to that on your own. I'm not trying to persuade anybody to do anything about all of that. But I want you to hear just the first part of this interview with Callie and his sister. And it's not political. I mean, it's just fact. It's very interesting. Okay, I'm going to share this with you. Just 1 second here. Okay. All right, here we go.
I actually think this book is going to, I never say this, but I mean it. I think this book is going to have a big effect on the course of the country. And the reason I think that is because you two are the perfect people to write it. And so I never do this, but I just want to start with your bios. So your siblings, Casey and Callie, you happen to have grown up in the same neighborhood as me in Washington, like blocks from me. So I know the world that you're from. You're writing about food, nutrition, the regulatory bodies that are poisoning the country. You are a lobbyist, and you are a Stanford educated physician. I just want to go through quickly each one, and starting with you. You're a doctor. Tell us the progression of your thinking on this and what it did to your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So trained at Stanford Medical School, then became trained as a head and neck surgeon.
Undergrad Stanford. Also.
Undergrad Stanford, medical school at Stanford, then went on to train in head and neck surgery.
Yes.
9 years into my postgraduate training.
How did you do in medical school and college?
Did well, was president of my Stanford class, you know, graduating top of my class with honors in medical school, and went on to a very competitive surgical subspecialty. Head and
Okay,
neck.
so I'm just saying that because normally I dismiss credentials out of hand, but these are real credentials and they matter, I think, to your credibility. Okay.
And I did what every good little medical student, you know, wants to do, which is climb the ranks of that academic ladder. But, you know, you
killed it.
Did well,
Yeah,
you know, and I
killing
got to the top of that mountain, right? 9 years into my postgraduate training, and I looked around me and I realized that, you know, patients in America are getting destroyed. Children, adults, the elderly. You know, you're so distracted in your little surgical subspecialty, focusing on the ear, nose, and throat, where I was, and you get distracted. You look around at what's happening in Americans, and our health is getting worse every single year. Patients in America are getting much sicker every year, more depressed. We're getting infertile, and life expectancy is going down in a country that's spending almost 2x more than any other country in the world.
So before we get into the details of what you did, tell us, I mean, of why you did what you did.
Yeah.
Tell us what you did. So
Yeah.
you spent your whole life working toward this goal. You reach the top, and then you decide not to do it?
Yeah. You know, I'm in the operating room in my 5th year of my surgical residency, and I'm looking down at a patient in front of me who's on our 3rd revision sinus surgery. And, you know, I know how to diagnose her. I know how to write the prescriptions. I know how to do the surgery. But what I kind of realized in that moment was like, I have no idea why this patient's actually sick. She has so many other health issues, prediabetes, arthritis. She's got some brain fog. She's got obesity, and she's got this sinus issue. And in my training, you know, I was never, ever, ever taught to look at the whole patient, to look at how all these things are connected. And I was only taught how to, you know, do the surgery and then bill for it. And I realized that there's a huge problem in how we're practicing medicine right now, which is what we're ignoring the root causes of why Americans are sick. And we're profiting off of patients getting sick and then doing things to them. That's the way the business model of healthcare works. You know, the way that healthcare, which is the largest and fastest growing industry in the United States, makes money is you have more patients in the system having more things done to them for longer periods of time. And when I kind of put some of these pieces together and realized that my training had totally essentially incapacitated me from really understanding why patients are sick and how to actually help them thrive, I actually had to walk away from the surgical world, because I realized that I was going to be making money off of essentially not spending time helping patients understand their health and actually just profiting off their illness.
So
I
9 years into medical
Yeah.
training at Stanford,
Yeah.
you gave it up voluntarily.
On my birthday, 30th birthday, I walked into the office of the chair of the department, and I put down the scalpel and I walked away, and I devoted my life to why are Americans getting sicker every year? Why are 50% of American children dealing with a chronic health issue? This was less than 1% 50 years ago. Why is our health getting destroyed the more that we spend? And
So
that's
what did they say when you walk into your colleagues at Stanford and say, I'm giving it up at 30?
You know, it wasn't really a conversation. You know, I knew that I couldn't cut into one more person until I understood why Americans are getting sicker every single year. I think that the unfortunate thing is that doctors don't really understand, because every level of our education is systematically focused on blinding us from thinking about root causes. We have over 100 medical and surgical subspecialties right now. And, you know, how you make money in the American healthcare system is you take a patient with 10 different issues and you send them to 10 different specialists, put them on 10 different meds. Maybe they eventually have 10 different surgeries. You never actually are taught how to put the pieces together, look at the whole body as a system, which of course it is. And part of this is because, you know, who are the people underwriting our medical education? It's the pharmaceutical companies. You know, we are taught how to be very algorithmic and robotic in how we look at patients. And so ultimately I left the surgical world and I went down the rabbit hole of asking why are we getting sicker every year?
It's just such a radical move to do something like that.
Yeah. I mean,
You're working towards it, and you give it up
yeah.
after 9 years.
Yeah. You know, this is the thing that I understood, and that I am working, and we are spending our lives to evangelize for this book, Good Energy, is that the reasons why Americans are getting sicker every year are very simple. Americans want to be healthy. Americans do not want to die early. They do not want to see their kids with all these chronic health issues like autism and food allergies and obesity and prediabetes and 40% of teens with mental health issues. No one wants this, but the system is rigged against the American patient to create diseases and then profit off of them. This is happening across almost every lever of our major industries, from processed food to tech to pharma. And so really what Americans need to understand is that these trends can stop immediately. We need to understand why we're sick, which is our primarily our toxic food system, and the ways that systematically several industries are profiting off of our addiction and illness. And if we can understand that and create very simple top-down and bottom-up strategies to address it, Americans will become rapidly healthier. And so as a physician, I took an oath to do no harm. And I took an oath to help patients thrive. And so the way that we can do that is by helping people understand the levers of corruption that are essentially keeping us sick.
I guess the reason I'm pressing you, and you're the sort of person, I mean, this is a compliment, clearly doesn't want to talk about herself, which is great. But I think it's relevant because it speaks to the intensity of your commitment and to your sincerity. So you're giving up the prize, you're giving up the money because you really believe this.
Yes.
And I think I just want to establish that at the outset.
Thank you.
Before we say anything more. So you're her brother, you're very close. I happen to know that. And
this is
and you're obviously proud of your sister.
RFK was talking about.
President of her class at Stanford. It's the kind of thing like, oh, my sister's at Stanford. She's at Stanford Medical School. She decides not to practice surgery, most impressive of all specialties. What's your reaction to this?
I called her and said she was a complete idiot. I mean, we were raised in Washington, D.C., right next to you, kind of conditioned to climb up the ladder.
Of course.
I went to Stanford. I went to Harvard Business School. That was what life is about, just kind of collecting those credentials. Casey, research at the NIH, as we talked about, top of her Stanford med school class. To me, that was it. And truly, and you hit on this, she had this is her life. This was her identity. This
of course.
was everything to her. And she bravely stepped away with no plan, just from a moral obligation. And I thought she was a complete idiot. And what I know now, and what I've been radicalized on, is she has convinced me that this is the most important issue in the country. It's an issue of corruption that starts at Stanford Med School being 50% funded by pharma and not training doctors on one nutrition class. Stanford Med School, Harvard Med School, 90% of med schools don't offer or require one nutrition class. Doctors simply aren't learning why people are getting sick, which we'd all assume they do. 80% of course loads in pharmacology. It's on how to take people that are getting sicker and sicker and manage those conditions, not to cure them. And that's a huge problem because that dynamic of the largest industry in the country is destroying human capital.
So as your sister is on one end of the equation, you're on the other. So you both have, you're from a community of strivers. That's what DC is.
Exactly.
And merit badge gatherers. And you've gotten two of the greatest merit badges ever.
Right.
HBS, Stanford Medical School. But you're all of a sudden finding yourself in Washington. Can you just explain your background a little bit?
Yeah, so I Casey was a bit smarter than me on the biology route. I wanted to be contributing to politics from an early age, and went to Stanford to go back into politics. Studied economics, political science, went straight back to campaigns after school. What I learned quickly is that then campaigns over, you work for the biggest spenders in DC, and I found myself across the desk from food industry and the farm industry. The farm industry spends 5 times more in DC than the oil industry. By far the biggest spender. Bipartisan, you're working for pharma. But starting with food, I learned early on that the food industry, and this is my construct, the food industry and the processed food industry was created by the cigarette industry. And I think this is very telling. It's something I learned. So in the 1990s, the two largest food companies in the world were R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris. What happened is when the Surgeon General way too late in the 1980s said cigarettes were maybe problematic, these were some of the largest companies in the world with the largest cash piles of any company in the world. So what they did is they used their cash piles to buy food companies. We think about the 80s as the Wall Street era M&A, a lot of deals. The 2 biggest M&A deals up until 1990 in world history were cigarette companies buying food companies. So you had in the 90s, these 2 cigarette companies very strategically do 2 things. They shifted their thousands of scientists who were experts at making cigarettes addictive to the food department. So we had the rise of ultra-processed food where our food now is a science experiment. The second thing they did is they shifted their lobbying. So the cigarette industry, of course, was the biggest, lobbying spenders and had a good playbook. They shifted their playbook on lobbying and rigging institutions of trust to food. So they created the food pyramid. So the cigarette industry, through the food companies they bought, paid off the FDA, the USDA, Harvard to create reports saying sugar doesn't cause obesity. And they lobbied for the food pyramid in the 1990s, we all remember, which said, animal-based fats are bad, carbs are good. Remember, carbs and sugar were basically the base of the pyramid. So the American diet, because of that, because we trust our medical institutions, which they know, we shifted our diet significantly to ultra-processed food. It was very intentional, the food pyramid. That was a ultra-processed food marketing document that carbs were fine, sugar was fine. And that shifted, and you look at dietary patterns. Today, child diet is 70% ultra-processed food. Now, what does that mean, right? Those are literally foods invented by the cigarette industry to addict kids. Obviously we've got sugar, but there's thousands of different ingredients and science concoctions that scientists work in a lab to make it more palatable, to make it more addictive. So food consumption, calorie consumption has skyrocketed. And the byproduct of these toxic ingredients that the cigarette industry I watched and helped with this, bought off the USDA, bought off the FDA, is they wreak havoc among our cells. The foundation of our diet is ingredients that we aren't biologically made to eat, that didn't exist 100 years ago. The foundation of our diet is three things when you look at any label. It's added sugar, processed sugar, which basically didn't exist 100 years ago, it's just from natural sources, ultra-processed grains, which were invented 100 years ago. The processing takes the fiber off. They're basically hidden sugars, devoid of nutritional value, and seed oils. Seed oils are the top source of American calories. And this is actually
seed oil. Top source of American calories.
Soybean oil, canola oil. This is the baseline of American calories right now. And these seed oils were actually created by John D. Rockefeller as a byproduct of oil production. It's basically engine lubricant. And the Rockefeller and those aligned with him actually lobbied to have this suitable for human consumption. That's how seed oils came into the American diet. They're much cheaper, but they're highly inflammatory. And just by definition, just at the highest level, these ingredients and all the chemicals we can't name that are in ultra-processed food are not natural ingredients that our bodies are made to handle. So there's, as we talk about in Good Energy, this produces a lot of side effects to our cells. The food industry isn't trying to kill Americans. They're trying to make food cheap and addictive. And what I learned, in the morning meeting with the food companies, trying to lobby and influence the USDA, being the lifeblood of nutrition research, paying off, nutrition research at Harvard and Stanford as a junior employee, shocked by that.
So you saw that?
Oh, my first week, as working for these industries, it was a list of top professors. And the food industry pays 11 times more for foundational nutrition research than the NIH. You go to any nutrition school in the country, the lifeblood of their school, they'll proudly admit this is from the processed food industry. In the past 2 years, there's been 50,000 peer-reviewed research studies on nutrition. We're the only animal that has peer-reviewed nutrition studies, and we're the only animals that are systematically obese, diabetic, and being crippled by metabolic dysfunction. We're born with an innate sense of knowing what's right for us. The problem, very strategically, and this is well known among the industry, is that ultra-processed food does, because they're able to do this science experiment with our food, it hijacks our biology, it hijacks our satiety signals. High fructose corn syrup, fructose, it makes us want to eat more. Because in the wild, when you see a bunch of fruit out there, you're well advised to eat it, historically. We've basically rigged our biology to hijack our signals that, make us satiated. So that's what ultra-processed food does. So that's the food industry, okay? The food industry actually, with their own set interests, want to make food addictive and cheaper. It kind of makes sense. The criminal devil's bargain is that it's highly tied to the healthcare industry. And as Casey said, the fastest growing industry in America right now isn't AI. It's not tech, it's healthcare. It's the largest and fastest growing industry. And just as a statement of economic fact, the best thing for that industry is a child getting sick. When a child gets sick, or any American gets sick with a chronic condition, with diabetes, obesity, kidney disease, heart disease, whatever, they go on a lifetime medication. They go on the metformin, they go on the statin, they have lifetime treatments, and they keep racking up more comorbidities. If you're diabetic, you have an average of 4 other comorbidities. So you keep racking up, but you don't die, you just suffer. You inevitably get infertility, depression. You start racking them up. So that's very good for the medical system to have these chronic conditions that need to be managed, just from a pure economic standpoint. That's how the system's set up. That's all happening largely because of our food system and other metabolic habits we can talk about, but largely because of our rise of ultra processed food that's really hacking our cells and really hijacking our cells. The criminal part, the devil's bargain, is that the healthcare system, you'd expect to be speaking out about why we're getting so sick, but they're not only silent on the reasons, they're not only trained Casey the first day of Stanford Med School that we're basically taking it as a given that people are lazy and going to get sick. We're just going to profit from treating them. They're
Okay. I'm going to point out something to you guys really quick because I'm going to move on from this video, although I think everyone should watch it. I want you to notice over to the right, it shows chapters. It says, who are Casey and Callie? And then now he's been talking about seed oils and the lies of the food pyramid. The next thing he's going to talk about is vaccines for newborns. I think that's very important for you to listen to because what he says is compelling. And then if you keep going down, you'll see, why is the medical industry ignoring this? The spiritual crisis. And then he goes on to talk about Ozempic, the birth control pill, the rise of dementia, and why Obamacare is harmful and how to fix the medical industry. Okay, now I'm going to unshare. If I can figure that out real quick. I wanted to point that out. Whoops. Here we go. I wanted to point out what were the upcoming topics so that you can kind of be like, okay, yeah, it's worth listening to. I probably have shared, but not in this group, about the fact that my sister, when she was having her now 10-year-old child, I was not very savvy, didn't know anything about newborn vaccines. I didn't know anything. I had vaccinated my children. I didn't know anything, but they came in and they basically said, while I was in the room, they had her sign all this paperwork. And one of the things is that they wanted her to sign that it was okay to vaccinate the baby for hepatitis B. And when they walked out, I thought, I said like this, how does a baby get hepatitis? And she goes, what? I said, how would a baby get hepatitis? Like, why would they vaccinate a baby for hepatitis? And then I started thinking, oh my God, I wonder if my sister has hepatitis and she hasn't told me and they're vaccinating the baby because and so I was like, just drop it. But her husband was in there and he goes, why would they? I said, I don't know. So he starts Googling it and then I start Googling it and come to find out, you vaccinate a baby for Hep B, or the only reason a baby would get Hep B is if they were using illicit drugs, or they were having sex. That's the only ways that you can get Hep B. So okay. My sister was like, I'm going to ask the nurse when she comes back in. And she asked the nurse and the nurse says, she said, how could a baby get Hep B? And she goes, well, if the mother has it. And she goes, they tested me for it. I don't have it. And she goes, yeah, they test all the mothers for it, but it's just standard procedure. She said, well, if I don't have it, how can a baby get Hep B? And the nurse goes, I don't know. So she goes, can you send somebody in here that can tell it to me? They sent another nurse in there and the nurse goes, it's just standard procedure. And so, after we just did a little quick Googling and there's no way for a baby to get Hep B, her husband went back out there and asked for that paperwork. He goes, I want that paperwork back that we signed. I want it shredded. I want you to shred it in front of me. We don't want Hep B for our baby. I don't know how she could possibly get it. And nobody here can tell me how a baby could get Hep B. And they were like, okay, well, we'll shred it. But you know how many shift changes you're going to go through while your wife is pregnant? You'll go through several shift changes. And if you don't tell every single shift change that you want it done, it's just standard. They pull that baby out. They do this. They do that. They cut the cord and they vaccinate them for Hep B. And he said, if they vaccinate my baby for Hep B, I'll own this place. He goes, nobody can tell me why a baby would ever get Hep B. Well, he covers it quite well in this interview. He says that the reasoning that they give for giving it is what if a child is on a playground someday and they come across a dirty needle, which we know the Hep B shot doesn't even last long enough to go down. I mean, they have to do it every so often or whatever. They keep boosting it and boosting it and boosting it. Anyway, like I said, I vaccinated my children. I didn't know any different, but it is worth listening to. It is worth listening to. I was like dumbfounded. And then he goes and starts telling all the lobbying and the money that's paid back and forth to make sure that everybody gets to make their money, their money, their money, their money. So, okay, that's all I'll say about that. That should never be a political topic as far as I'm concerned. I know it is a political topic, but okay. Another thing that this made me think of is when I first started talking about plexus and I started talking about autoimmune disorders and my sister's allergies, and I started saying, why could we not find any help? I was really confounded by the fact that we couldn't find any help for my sister. And my sister, when she went to be tested for her food allergies, they could tell her that she was on a scale of 1 to 5, which is the scale they used. She was a 4 on dozens of food. She was a 5 on wheat. And actually, when I say dozens of food, I'm saying very common foods. She was a 4 as far as how, on a scale of 1 to 5, how allergic she was. That same doctor that sent her to that to have that testing done, when her allergies went away, he's one of the ones that called me in on the carpet after a lot of his patients were no longer needing his help because they were my customers. He started hearing my name a lot in conjunction with people who no longer needed his help. And so he called me in, and I thought I was so naive. I thought he was wanting to, learn. And I sat there and he drilled me, and he started talking to me about chronic disease and what causes chronic disease. And we don't know what starts it. We know the steps, he says. We know the steps. We know what happens, but we just don't know what causes most of these diseases. And I said, I kind of think I might know. And he's like, you think you know? And I said, well, I think I do. I think it's leaky gut. And he was like, leaky gut? And I was like, yeah, leaky gut. And he's like, leaky gut. Yes, we do this back and forth over and over. My husband could see that he was mocking me, so he's like getting me out of there. A few days later, my sister, who is now well from her food allergy, who had been seeing him prior to this for her food allergy, is in there with her husband. Her husband, also one of his patients. He's talking to her about, how'd that thing go with your food allergy? She said, actually, I don't have it anymore. He's like, why? And she begins to educate him on leaky gut. It's the second time he's heard it in his life. The next time I'm in that same office, now I didn't go to see him. I was going to see a chiropractor who shared a lobby with him. And he heard my voice out in the hallway, and he came and he's like, hey, when you're finished, will you come back over here and talk to me again? And I'm like, yeah. He starts telling me about this patient that he has who had come in. He doesn't know it's my sister. He's like, there's this patient that she came in and she said, and I heard blah, 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 leaky gut. And he said, her husband's one of my patients. And she said her food allergy went away. And she said the same term you did, leaky gut. I said, really? Listen to my voice. And he's like, yeah. And I said, did she sound very much like me? And he just kind of looked at me like real weird. And he goes, actually, come to think of it, yeah, she sounds just like you. I said, that's my sister you're talking about. I recognized her story, what he was telling me. I said, my sister, I got her well using leaky gut information. And he started to dig into it and actually ended up enrolling in Plexus, enrolling all his nurses in Plexus because of this profound information. The other story that it makes me think of is early on in my Plexus career. When I was sharing this information and sort of asking for people to help, give me feedback. What do y'all know about this? Does anybody know anything about that? I think this and I think that. One of my husband's relatives reaches out to me and asks me if I could politely shut her down. And I was like, what are you meaning? And she's like, I'm just saying my husband spent all of this money and time in medical school to get his degree, and you're kind of making it sound like," she told me how I made it sound to her. And she goes, "I'm just saying, while that all might be true, she's big time in debt. And they don't know how to get out from underneath it except for just to follow the path that was laid out before them. And if I would kindly quit telling basically their relatives that all this stuff that Cassie and Callie means are coming out and saying right now, which is, it's a scam. There's so much lobbying. There's so much, this person gets paid off so that they can put this chart and graph. This person gets paid off so that they can say X, Y, and Z. Okay, I'm getting into all the deep stuff here. I have shared so far in the group, I've shared the Callie and Cassie means. The brother is the one that RFK Jr. was talking about that persuaded him to take the phone call. That interview had already happened before the announcement was made, but I just thought that was very interesting. I have also shared a couple other resources that I just wanted to touch on tonight. I'm not going to tell you about them, but there is a Dr. Hartman video who is our plexus doctor explaining and answering some frequently asked questions about Restore. Common questions like breastfeeding and nursing, can they use it? And also he goes into the ingredients and why they work. He also explains why they work in a similar way, but a safe way to the GLP-1 semaglutide type, Ozempic type med, these weight loss meds that you see people are getting great results on, how these work in a similar way, but it's safe. And he explains that. He explains all the different blends. There's a digestive blend. There's an appetite blend. I mean, my appetite has gone from out of control to almost nothing by using this stuff. Also, another video that I've shared is a video from where I gave a testimony on, and it's not about my testimony. You already know my testimony, but I was very excited to be on a call that was hosted by another diamond in our company. And she had several people who had been testers give their stories. And the story I had shared about on one of my videos, or maybe last week's Zoom, talking about Wendy Larson, how she had basically gone through grief after she started Restore. It started actually bringing old grief back. And somebody was wise enough to share with her, keep going. It's just when you're, whatever trauma whatever era your liver went through the trauma, it's just trying to release those cells, so to speak. I'm probably calling it the wrong thing, and once it's released and you can release it, we harbor anger and trauma and stuff in the liver. And she initially gained 10 pounds and she was like, didn't want to keep doing it. She said she was already fluffy enough, didn't want to keep going. But then she kept going for a few more weeks, and she lost a total of 30 pounds. So that initial 10 pounds and then 20 pounds more at the time of this call that I shared the link to. There are 3 or 4 other testimonies on there too that are very compelling, people just sharing their stories. And I know a lot of you had wondered where that is. So when you go into our group, you'll see the Callie and Casey Means group, and it says number 1, like links from tonight. 1, Callie and Casey Means. For comments, number 2 is the Dr. Hartman video, and number 3 is the video from the one I just described. Okay, let me see. I want to highlight one ingredient, that's not in our products, but I want to highlight it to you guys to be watching out for it, because it's highly inflammatory and it's common to find in things like creamers, dairy products. It's even in lunch meat lots of times, but you can always find brands that it's not there. A lot of times people, I did a deep dive into this. Several years ago. Hold please. I have to go turn off some water really quick. You guys can just hang real quick. I'll be right back.
Yes, they do, Faye. It's called, hold on, he said it in there. Just a second, I marked it in my thing. It's called Good Energy by Casey, or by, yeah, Casey Means, MD, and Callie Means. So yes, they do, Faye.
I knew that my timer was going to go off, might go off in the middle of this. And anyway, okay. Actually, I saw that it was about to go off and I didn't want to get off into this topic and have to stop. So, okay. The food, the ingredient that I was talking about is Carrageenan, and it's spelled Carrageenan. This is another one of those things that was brought to light in my life in a very weird way. During the time I was trying to help my niece get well from Crohn's disease, I was reading up in a Crohn's forum, like on a Reddit forum, where people were trying to help each other. This was sort of before Facebook groups. So it kind of worked like that, where some people were saying, I've noticed this. Has anybody noticed this? If I eat this, this happens, and this and that and the other. And one of the things that they had noticed was a common denominator amongst people who had Crohn's. Now, it doesn't just affect Crohn's, come to find out, but this is how I learned about it. Was this ingredient, and people were like, it's kind of like when my sister couldn't figure out what in the pizza made her sick. But once enough people were adding in saying, well, it happens also when you eat ice cream. It happens also if you eat sour cream. It happens also. Well, it's in a lot of dairy products. And what it is it's called an emulsifier, which means like if you're adding liquid and powder together, like in the form of a shake, lots and lots and lots of protein shakes have this in it. Ours does not, but if you are if you're trying to make a creamy something creamy, they add an emulsifier to it lots of times, like Swiss Miss. Unless they've taken it out, Swiss Miss has it in it. It helps give it that, like when you're shaking it, it mixes together. That's what an emulsifier does. Well, when I remember reading it the first time, I'm like, I've never heard of that. Luckily, I don't eat that. And we were out of town on a camping trip when I came across this thread, and somebody had said it was in Swiss Miss. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess it's in Swiss Miss. So I go and I'm about to throw out the Swiss Miss, and I'm looking down through and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was in almost everything I brought with us. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never even seen the word before. I've never paid attention to it. So the reason I'm sharing it with you is oftentimes if someone has an autoimmune disorder, that ingredient in America, now if you go look it up, you can go find it's an Irish seaweed. It's often used in medicinal purposes in Ireland. They actually will take this seaweed, they boil it, the stuff that floats to the top, which is the same stuff. If you ever open a can of Vienna sausages or Vienna weenies, depends on where you're from. If you ever open a can and that jelly stuff on the top, that's what the stuff is like, and it makes stuff creamy if you shake it together. That's what will rise to the top of, like when they boil this seaweed down, is this like gelatiny type stuff. And when they do it in their homeland and they do it the right way, it's okay. But what we've done in the United States is the way that they go about extracting it, they do something to it that makes it a carcinogen. It literally is such a bad carcinogen, and it's such a sure thing of a carcinogen, that when they want to study tumors in mice, the way they give them the tumors is by feeding them Carrageenan. Now, it's vegan because it's a seaweed, so you'll find it in all kinds of natural foods. But the reason I know for sure how bad it is often I can take someone who is sick and only teach them about Carrageenan and they get well, especially if it is gut related. If I know it is gut related, often they can only switch to a different coffee creamer or something that they're doing on a daily basis. There are brands out there of everything, like cottage cheese. I use Daisy. It doesn't have it. The creamers, there's all these like Bliss brands of creamers that don't have it. Heavy whipping cream is one that's hard to find, but they have organic heavy whipping cream, and they have but you have to look at almost everything. If you don't want to be actively eating something that they give to mice to give them tumors, that is what you need to be paying attention to. Now, I felt like that was something very important to share here. There is a website. I'll go get it right now and put it in the links. The first website I ever came across that had this kind of info when no other websites had anything on there. It's called cornucopia.org. And if you type in cornucopia and Carrageenan, I'm going to share this one as the next link. It's going to pull up. Here we go. I think I'm on number 4. Link number 4 is the link to cornucopia, Carrageenan research. They have all the stuff that's a lot of my information comes from there now on that particular topic. And I'm at the bottom of my notes here. I'm almost finished with this call tonight, but let's see. It may be at the bottom here. Let's see. Oh, last but not least, I want to talk to you guys about grounding. I promised that I was going to share all of these simple, easy ways to get yourself well. I came across grounding information several years ago, and now it's something that's one of the reasons that we continue to not spray our yard, is because I like to be able to go put my feet in the grass and know that I am not pulling toxins up through my feet. I'm very careful where I ground because I don't want glyphosate coming up through my feet. Your feet are very porous if you don't know. Grounding or earthing is basically the practice of using the electromagnetic energy that comes up out of the earth to lower inflammation and other things in your body. It is believed that when we started wearing rubber sole shoes as part of when the health epidemic became so bad, because we no longer have constant contact with the ground. It's not a religion. It's not a cult. So I remember somebody telling me one time, you better be careful teaching people about grounding. And I said, well, don't go hunting Easter eggs with your kids then. Are you joking? Don't tell people to put their feet in the grass. That might be a sin. All I'm telling people, get all twisted up. I'm not telling you it's a religion. What I'm telling you, and it's not anything weird. People get all tripped out when I talk about frequency, or when I talk about electromagnetic energy. People start thinking that that's new age. And I say, well, don't use a light bulb then, because that's all the same stuff. Don't be tripping my trigger, because I will trip your trigger back. I've been digging into this stuff for a long, long time. There's nothing new age about putting your feet in the grass. And they say, even more so, if you can find where a dog has wallered a spot in the ground, they can feel it. They can feel the energy coming up out of the ground. They know where it is. They lay there to keep their joints from hurting. So if you go out there and put your feet, as long as you're not putting it in like I said, don't put it where there's been weed killer sprayed. But if you find the nice lush grassy places, or Native Americans will go out and find where like deer have laid. That was one of the most convincing things I ever read about it years ago. Now, if you're someone who doesn't spend any time outside, they have all kinds of other ways that you can ground. They sell grounding mats, which is and they sell grounding sheets. They sell all kinds of these things that basically you can plug into. You're not plugging it into the electricity. You're plugging it into the mouth, the eyes in the mouth, you're plugging it into the mouth. That is the ground. And they actually have it where I've got one plugged in over there. It's a mat, and it's got a wire that comes out of it, and you can plug it into that right there, and you're plugged into the ground. Your house is grounded to keep you from getting like electrocuted. At least that's how I think it works. And your house is grounded. Your countertops and stuff are grounded because of metal appliances and all that kind of stuff. And so they plug it into the ground, the grounding rod. Lots of times if you walk around outside your house, you'll see that there's like a rod that goes down on my back porch. There's a rod that goes down into the ground. It's they call it the ground, and it's pulling earth energy up into it. When you look at scans of people, like you can look at an inflammatory scan of somebody before they lay on a grounding mat, and then after 8 hours of sleeping on a grounding mat, and all the inflammation that goes down in their body from doing it. I do it every time I get a chance. I go put my feet in the grass. It actually centers me. I can feel it. Like I can feel it like taking like almost like a static feeling from my, I don't know how to describe it. It makes me feel grounded. Oh, funny, right? Makes me feel centered. And so that is something that there are all kinds of resources about this, that I don't promote any particular one or whatever, but I do have a grounding, like I said, I have grounding products that I've gotten from a company, but that's not what this is about. I'm not making any money on it or anything. I just wanted you guys to know it is extremely simple to do. If you're even feeling panicky, you can go put your feet in the grass, and it's a big deal. It makes a big difference. So, okay. Let's see if I've covered everything for tonight. Yep. Okay. I think all the links are in our group. Thank you guys for hopping on here with me tonight. Did anybody you may have a question that I haven't.
Lori, did you see where Lisa Montgomery up there was talking about the apps that they have now that you can do to see what's in your food?
Oh, like
she said,
or something. I can't.
She said, have you talked about the apps used to scan food products to see what additives or preservatives like Carrageenan and other seed oils are in the products? Nope. She uses Yucca, Open Food Facts, and Trash Panda. I thought that'd be pretty interesting for some of the people. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'll say it out loud what she said here so it'll be on the recording since the chat doesn't show up. Okay. We talked about the apps to use to scan food products to see what additives, preservatives like Carrageenan and seed oils are in the product. Okay, hang on. Yucca, Y-U-K-A, I may not be saying it right. Open Food Facts, Trash Panda are 3 that she used, so that's good. You could find those in the App Store, I'm assuming. Let me see. Go back down. Okay, I guess that's all for us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you jumping on here with me. I don't know that we'll do these every Monday, but I plan on doing another one next Monday. We'll just see what the fallout is from here. Let me know. I'll post something in the morning asking some questions about maybe if you had questions tonight, or if there's anything you wanted to further discuss, or if any of these videos that I've shared or links that I've shared produce any more questions. That way we'll all have a place where we can chat with each other. Thank you guys so much. Y'all have a great night.